Good evening. Welcome, everyone. My name is Julie Shields-Ratina, and I am the Director of College Planning at MEFA. And I'd like to welcome you here tonight to our college financing webinar. And we're very fortunate to have with us a very special guest, expert, my colleague that we have worked with for years, Iris Godis, who is the Associate Vice President of Enrollment and Dean of Admissions at Dean College. And she will do the presentation this evening, and I'll just go over a few housekeeping pieces at first, and then I will be behind the scenes also monitoring the questions. And so type your questions into the question and answer section. We have muted you so that we would keep the noise level down. But we want this to be interactive. So, and I see that there are a number of you joining us, a good number of us, of you. So type your questions in and I will answer some behind the scenes and I'll pose some to Iris. And by the end, we'll make sure we get through all of those. We have turned off chat. So use the question and answer section. If you want to raise your hand, to get my attention, you can do that as well. And then of course, to leave the webinar, you can click leave. This webinar is also going to be closed captions tonight. All right, and we'll go to the next slide. And I'll just tell you a little bit more about MEFA. So MEFA has been around since 1982. We are a not-for-profit state authority here in Massachusetts. And our main mission is to help families plan, save, and pay for college. Among many other things, we have a great series of webinars on this topic, as well as many other topics related to going to college and financing a college education. So please return often to our website, mefa.org/events, so that you can take advantage of all of the other great webinars we have. Let me just check in on the closed captioning. Are you okay, Janice? Ready to go? I'll look in the chat. Great. All right. So Iris, you can take it from here.
All right, thanks, Julie. Well, welcome everyone. I'm glad you could join us this evening. I am Iris Godis. I work at Dean College. I've been doing this for many years. I've been in the financial aid field for 32 years. I was just counting when I was talking to somebody else about that today. So it's been a very long time. I've been in the field before there was the internet. Or at least that we knew there was an internet. So I've seen a lot of changes, but there's a lot that's exactly the same. And that's all around families struggling and figuring out how to pay for college, being nervous and anxious about it, being stressed about the process. That has not changed in the 30+ years I've been in the field. So I'm happy to be here tonight. I'm hoping to help you through it. It's also nice for me. I do a number of webinars for Dean College as well. And since we have students applying from all over the country and actually all over the world, it's nice to know I'm speaking to everyone from Massachusetts and we're in the same time zone and we're all kind of coming from the same perspective. So that's a real treat for me. Tonight's seminar is going to cover a lot of information about the entire financial aid process. We're going to start out by talking about the different types and sources of financial aid. So we're sure you have a good solid understanding of all that's involved there, all the different types of funding sources. Then we'll get into the application process. And from there, we'll go into how financial aid decisions are made. So you understand what happens after you submit that application. From there, we'll go into learning how to pay for college if in your situation, which is most people's situation, financial aid is not covering the entire cost. We'll get into that for a little bit. And then talk briefly about some free resources that are available for you after tonight. And we'll take some questions along the way. We'll leave time for questions at the end, I hope. And Julie will be monitoring those questions. So feel free to type your questions in the Q&A box at any point along the way. So with that, we're going to get going into talking about the different types and sources of financial aid. So the first thing to understand is, what does financial aid entail? And there's really three major types of financial aid sources. Grants and scholarships, and that's the good stuff. That's what everybody thinks about when they think of financial aid. That's what everyone's after. Of course, we call it gift aid because it really does serve as a gift to you. And I don't know how many parents we have here and how many students we have here. I'm assuming it's a little of both. So I'll try to speak to both sides of that. But anyway, so this is money that you will receive. It immediately reduces your cost to attend that college, and it's money that you don't have to pay back. Then there's the federal work-study program, which gives you the opportunity to work part-time in college. And in some schools, it is on campus. In other schools, it is both on campus and off campus. So there's both varieties. And it's a great opportunity to work while you're going to school. The big attraction within a college campus and even with some off-campus employers is that that money is coming from a federal source. So I know I really love hiring work-study students because that money is not coming out of my department's budget. It's coming from the financial aid budget. So work-study positions are highly coveted both by students and by the different departments on campus. It's a great way for students to get experience. And I often tell families who are nervous about, particularly their freshmen working right out of the gate, they think they're transitioning to college, they need some time to adjust. And my point to you to think about, parents in particular, is number one, when your kids aren't working, they're not studying either. So don't kid yourself thinking that they're gonna be able to manage their time better when they're not working. In fact, the research shows that students who work while they're in school under 20 hours a week actually do better. They learn time management, they manage their time better, and when they're working on campus in particular, they have an employer and a supervisor who is really looking out for them. We want our work-study students to be successful. So we're making sure they're staying on track, that they're doing well in school, that they're getting time off when they need it for exams or whatever, and we're great resources for these students. So I encourage you, if you do get a work-study award, take advantage of it right from the start. And then lastly, federal student loans are part of the financial aid world as well. You hear a lot about loans in the media. We'll talk a little bit more about them tonight as well. All these different sources or all of these different types of financial aid come from different sources. And what the Financial Aid Office is going to do is look at all of the different opportunities from all of these different sources, pull it all together for you, and provide what we call a financial aid package that includes all of the money that we know about that you could be eligible for from every source that we're aware of. So on the federal side, there's grants. The work-study program is federal. There's student loans, and there's also some tax incentives. So look for, we're not going to go into that too much tonight, but look for that after your student finishes freshman year. You'll get some information from the college with a little form called a 98T is what you're looking for. And some of them send it electronically, and you'll be able to use that information to take a tax deduction potentially on your taxes. So keep an eye out for that. And studentaid.gov is the website you want to go to for all things federal. There's a wealth of information there. In Massachusetts, there are also grants, scholarships, tuition waivers. There's a loan program in Massachusetts, and you see the website there where you can get more information about all of those opportunities. And again, the colleges are aware of most of them and will award them to you. In the case of tuition waivers, those are available to students who qualify and are attending public colleges and universities in Massachusetts. So the tuition waivers don't apply to the private schools in Massachusetts, but they do to the publics. Take a look at those on that website to see if you might qualify for any of those. Those you will need to initiate and let the college know that you're eligible. And then the colleges and universities themselves have a lot of institutional aid. The private schools have much more institutional aid than the public schools. And that's, just a matter of how the business works. And again, there's grants, there's scholarships, and there's some institutional loans that depends on the college. All colleges don't have loans, but there are some that do. And then lastly, there's other, what we in the financial aid offices call outside aid or outside scholarships. So other agencies that you can explore. Definitely take advantage of parents. Check with your employer to see if they offer anything, or other organizations that you might be involved with, like the Rotary or your church, anything that you're involved with, veterans. There's other opportunities out there. So make sure you're exploring every opportunity that you might have available. And I wanted to mention, I know everyone here tonight, I don't think is from Natick High School, but tonight's presentation initiated at the request of Natick, and I know we have a lot of Natick families. And so I promised the school counseling office that I would put in a plug for the Natick High Scholarship Program. This is your opportunity, Natick students, to get some additional scholarship monies. That's this outside scholarship that I'm talking about. You see there the dates of when you want to be paying attention to that. I know for students that are here, or parents that if you're going to nag your students like I did to mine, it's the last thing you want to do. You've done your admissions applications, so hopefully you've done your financial aid application. You're tired of applications, and you don't want to do any more, and you don't want to write another essay. But I promise you, it's the least competitive scholarship you can apply for. And your tip tonight is everybody else isn't getting this information. So you got a heads up on this, take advantage of it, take the time to apply, and there's a good chance that you'll get one. You'll see the contact information there for Natick. And let me say, for those of you that are not from Natick that are joining us tonight, most high schools have the same thing. I know my kids went to Framingham High School, and I know we might have some Framingham families tonight. I'm not sure of the dates of Framingham this year, but they run a very similar process. And I have two daughters. My youngest just graduated last December, so I'm now done with tuition cost or tuition payment. So it's very freeing. Now I can focus back on retirement. But anyway, both of my girls spent the time, they did the work, they applied for a number of scholarships, and my oldest daughter got one and my youngest daughter got two, and we didn't think either one would get anything. So it was very surprising and very exciting, and I encourage you to take advantage of that and learn what happens at your high school.
Can I ask one question, Iris?
Absolutely.
Is that just for seniors? Is it for seniors, or can juniors apply for that too?
Yeah, typically of the high
Natick.
school. Yeah, and Natick is definitely seniors. And frankly, all of the high schools that I've been associated with, it is a senior year application. So it really is directed to seniors. Certainly ask in your school counseling office or college office, however your school is organized, if there's anything that you could apply for in sophomore, junior year. But those that I am aware of, it is a senior year application. So for those of you that are here that aren't seniors yet, now you know you're ahead of the game and you're ready to roll next year. A couple of other concepts that it's important to understand regarding the financial aid. We're going to talk about merit-based aid, and then we're going to talk about need-based aid. And it's important to understand the difference between the two. So the merit-based aid, typically in the form of scholarships, oftentimes the word award is used, are awarded to you in recognition of your achievement of some type. The most popular is academic achievement, athletic as well. Now with athletic scholarships, you need to be at a Division I or a Division II athletic program in the NCAA. If you're looking at Division III schools are not allowed to offer athletic scholarships. So I'll give you an example. At Dean College, we are a Division III school, and so we are unable to offer athletic scholarships to students or to our student athletes. However, those student athletes are absolutely considered for the academic scholarships, and might end up with the same amount of money they would have received if it was just an athletic scholarship. So that doesn't mean student athletes, if you're looking at Division III, that you won't get any money. It just won't be designated to you as an athlete. Artistic scholarships are also popular, performing arts or other types of arts. We have a performing arts scholarship as an example for our theater and our dance students, and this is also very popular. There's others as well. So definitely look through the college websites and check to see what scholarships they have available that are based simply on what we call your merit, your achievement, rather than your financial need. So when we're determining your eligibility for scholarships under this category of merit-based aid, we're not looking at your financial aid application or what your financial need appears to be. It's strictly based on your achievements. You do also want to pay attention to whether or not those awards are renewable and what kind of requirements are associated with you being able to receive it year after year. So pay particular attention to that when you receive these awards. Oftentimes, particularly with the academic awards, you need to achieve a certain minimum GPA in order to keep it year after year. So an important conversation to have as a family. You know, what happens if you don't achieve that GPA? If you lose your scholarship, will you be able to stay at the school? You know, if you do lose it for a year, can you get it back is an important question to ask the colleges. So lots of information will come with your financial aid award, and make sure you understand all of the conditions. There are some schools that require a separate application. So back to looking at those websites. You can start combing those now. Those of you that are juniors, that's something that you can start looking at now as well. Not that you're going to apply yet, but you could be looking at it so you are well prepared as you go into senior year to know, because typically the deadlines and the application requirements are the same year over year. So that will get you really very prepared if you are already pinning down what your college list might be. And there are some schools, Dean is one of them, that we don't have a separate application. Your admission application serves as your application for scholarships as well. So there's nothing additional to do. Some schools will have a deadline, so make sure that you find out if there is a deadline and don't miss those opportunities. Okay, so that's merit-based aid. Need-based aid, which is where a lot of the money is based on your what we'll call financial eligibility or financial need. And that's going to be the result of your financial aid application that we'll be getting to in just a minute or two. And the eligibility is based on a standard formula. So every student that applies is providing the same information. The formula is the same as it's applied to each family. And as a result, it's the best way that we can be as fair as possible in determining eligibility for this type of financial aid. This does include both grants as well as loans and work study. They all fall under the need-based aid category. Another important thing to pay attention to at some point, it won't be the first thing you look at, but be aware that there is a policy called satisfactory academic progress. Every college is required to have this policy in place, so you will get this information, and it will let you know what you need to achieve academically in order to have your financial aid renewed every year. So make sure you pay attention to that. So similar to what I was talking about with some of the merit scholarships that might have a requirement, your need-based aid will also have the satisfactory academic progress requirement in order to continue to receive your aid the following year. A little bit about student loans. You have a lot of information here on this slide. I'm not going to go through it line by line, but the interest rate right now is the lowest that I ever remember it being. And again, I've been in aid over 30 years. When I started, the interest rate was 8.25%. I'll never forget it. And now look where we are. So it really is a very low interest rate. This loan, for any parents that are concerned, this loan is strictly in the name of the student. Parents, you have no responsibility to this loan whatsoever. If your student does not repay the loan, it is not on you. It will not affect your credit history or anything else. So this is the student's responsibility, and the student is the borrower, all on their own. Their eligibility is based on they're being enrolled in a degree program at a college, and their enrollment must be at least half-time, which at most schools is 2 classes or 6 credits. There are 2 different types of student loans, subsidized and unsubsidized. And the difference is whether or not the interest that is accruing on that loan is being subsidized by the government or if you are going to be responsible. So you see there over on the right side of the screen that there are different amounts each year. So a freshman can get $5,500, and then it goes up each year until you're a junior, and then senior year is $7,500. The reason behind that is that each year that you have more education, you are improving your education and your likelihood of getting a good job and the likelihood that you'll be able to repay that loan. So the government, which sets these limits, is trying to, help you manage well and so that you don't overdo it with debt. Now that $5,500 could be a mixture of subsidized and unsubsidized, or it could be all unsubsidized. So without getting into too much detail, keep an eye on that, and just know that the interest will be accruing while you're enrolled in school on the unsubsidized loan, but the subsidized loan almost acts like a grant while you're in school. You don't have to pay anything. It's not accruing interest. It's just sitting there waiting for you to leave school and to start to repay it. The unsubsidized, you also don't need to be paying anything on that loan. It will continue to accrue while you're enrolled in school. There's lots of information out there at studentaid.gov. So I encourage you to look into that further. You see a number of things there about what happens after 4 years, what that looks like. The estimated total debt of the 32 to 34 would be the interest that is accruing over time. And so what that kind of turns into if you take 10 years to pay back that loan. All right, Julie, I'll stop for a second before we get into the application process, just to make sure if there's any questions that should be addressed right now, I'll jump into that.
Yes, I have just one for you right now, Iris, because it pertains specifically to a dean scholarship. The person was just asking about the Dean College PA scholarship and wondering if anyone can apply for that.
So I assume PA, you're referring to our Performing Arts Scholarship. And it's not a separate application. So if you are applying to either our dance program or our theater program, you will automatically be considered for the Performing Arts Scholarship, and it will be based on the results of your audition. All dance and theater students must audition, and that will kind of dictate whether or not you qualify for the Performing Arts Scholarship. Okay, so nothing special you need to do. Just finish your application, submit your audition. It's all online and video this year, as I'm sure every performing arts school is doing. And so that's making the process a little bit more in your control, students, which is great if you're a performing arts student, whether it's Dean or elsewhere. You have a lot more control than you probably had in the past, but we'll automatically consider you for that scholarship. All right, should I keep moving, Julie?
Yes, that's great.
All right, let's get into the application process. So first of all, you want to make sure you're paying attention to college deadlines. And different colleges might have different deadlines. So make sure that if you don't already know, if you're a senior, that you're looking at that now. Go to the college financial aid page, find the application section, and check to see if they have any deadlines. What I always recommend senior year is once you have your list of colleges determined, or as you're going along the way, keep track of that. You see there that MEFA offers you a great tool called an application manager that gives you a handy little tool to keep track of this information. But jot down, whether it's there or on paper or in your phone, however you want to do it, every deadline for every school, both admissions and financial aid. And then once you have the list of schools, find the earliest deadline. That's your deadline, because if you meet the earliest school, you'll meet everybody else as well. So, we have it there bright and bold and caps and underlined. Don't submit applications late. For financial aid in particular, that's the best way to lose money, is to apply after the deadline. These are dates that colleges will use to control their money. They know that sometimes students aren't paying enough attention and they're going to apply late. It's very difficult for them to manage the money with how applications continue to roll in after that deadline. So you're definitely losing some opportunity if you miss deadlines. So really encourage you to pay attention to that. So now let's get into the application. So number one is the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. Some of you seniors maybe have already started your FAFSA. Maybe some of you have submitted it already. Again, this is something that you would do your senior year. Remember that this is a free application. There are some websites that will charge you to do this form. If that happens to you, you are in the wrong place. There is only one place that you should be paying money to apply for financial aid, and I'm going to get to that on the next slide. But this is a completely free process. Every college that offers financial aid will require the FAFSA, so you will need that for all of your schools. Those of you that are seniors, it's available now, so if you haven't started yet, it's not too early to get going, and I encourage you to get started on it. FAFSA.gov is the website. There's a little picture of what that looks like on the top of your screen. Below that, there is a My Student Aid mobile app. Now, my understanding is that it is not currently available for the 21-22 FAFSA. I think that I checked it last week and it wasn't available yet. And there was a note that said it will be available by the end of the year. So just want you to be aware of that. Honestly, I find it easier to do it on a computer. There's a lot of information there. But whatever works for you is fine. Another important thing that you need to know is this FSA ID. The FSA ID is basically your electronic signature. So students, you need your own FSA ID. And you will need to have at least one parent, if you're a two-parent family, also will need an FSA ID. Parents, if any of you have older children that you have gone through this process before with your older children, so you have your own FSA ID, you can use that same one for every child in college, okay? So the FSA ID goes to the person, not to the application, it's the person. It's like your own PIN, for example. So student gets one, parent gets one. So that's something you can take care of right now if you haven't done it yet. I always get questions from juniors, can I get it now if I want to? And my answer is yes, you can. However, you need to put it somewhere that you're going to remember it next year. And most people don't remember that far ahead. So you can get it ahead of time, but you got to be really organized and remember where it is and what it is if you want to get it this early. So make sure you take care of that. And then another very handy tool that you will get to when you're inside the FAFSA. So when you start to do your FAFSA and you get to the income section, and this is for both students who filed a tax return and parents who filed a tax return, there is this IRS data retrieval tool. What that will allow you to do is go over to the IRS website. You will re-identify yourself so they're sure you're you. So they'll ask you for your credentials. You want to make sure that you're matching exactly what you had put on your tax return, for example, address. And then assuming you get in there, then you'll get a question, would you like us to send your tax data to FAFSA? And you say yes to that, and it zips right into your FAFSA. It's very cool, it's very quick. It is the cleanest way for you to get your tax data into the FAFSA and assure that you have the right numbers there. The colleges also know that you have used that. So in terms of verifying your data, they know that basically it's already verified because that data came directly from the IRS. Everybody is not eligible to use it. There's certain circumstances, for example, a family who does not file, a married family that does not file jointly. If you file separate tax returns, It can only bring over one. And so it doesn't work in those circumstances. There will be a series of questions that will determine whether or not you can use that tool, but I encourage you to use it if you can. MEFA also has a webinar, so take advantage of that if you'd like more information on the FAFSA. It will take you through, I'm going to go through a little bit of it, but there's more details on that webinar. So let's get into what you're reporting. First of all, student citizenship status is very important. In order for a student to be eligible for federal or state financial aid, and in some cases, college's own institutional money, you must be a U.S. citizen or what we call an eligible non-citizen, a permanent resident, refugee. There's certain eligible non-citizens. That's the case of the student. However, the student's parent does not have to be a U.S. citizen. So if you are in that situation, students, then you're going to put all your information on your section. When you get to your parents section, then under the parent social security number, you'll just enter all zeros. A parent in this situation will not be able to get an FSA ID because you need a social security number to get that ID. So in your case, you will need to print out a signature page, sign it, and mail it back in. So the process will be a little bit slower for you, but you can still get through it, don't worry. You're also going to report on your FAFSA every college that you're applying to. Now, if you'd like to get your FAFSA done now, and you're still deciding which colleges you're going to apply to, but you know of at least one, then you can get started now. And then once your FAFSA is processed, you can go back in and you can add other colleges. So you don't need to do it all at once, but if you know all of your colleges now, then you will put them all there and all the colleges will get the information at the same time. There is a limit to 10 colleges. So if for some reason you are applying to more than 10 colleges, then what you'll need to do is submit your FAFSA with your top 10. And then once your FAFSA is processed, you'll be notified. You can go back into FAFSA. You go into the section that says you want to make a correction. You'll go into that school section and you will just swap out some of the colleges that you had in there to the additional colleges, resubmit your FAFSA, and then all of those colleges will get it. So no problem, it just will be a two-step for you. Now, whose information are you reporting? For most students, you are reporting your parents' information. Now, depending on your family circumstances, determining what parents are being reported can be a little bit tricky. So first and foremost, if your parents are married, then you will include your married parents in there. And by this, I mean your original parents, your birth parents, or your adoptive parents, those parents, okay? This includes those in same-sex marriages, which is now kind of, you know, we're all over that. That was new news a few years ago, but so anyone with a legal married status, it's those parents. If your parents are not married, but they live together, you are reporting both of your parents. So you will combine their income information together and you will report both of them, whether they're married or not, if they are living together in your household. In the case of divorced or separated parents who are living apart, then you need to determine who's the custodial parent. The custodial parent typically is the parent that you live with most. So determine the parent you live with most. If it's literally 50-50, then the parent that's providing more of your support financially. And if that's literally 50-50, generally I tell people pick one. So I'll let you decide that. If that then custodial parent is remarried, then you will be reporting on your FAFSA, your custodial parent, and that parent's current spouse. In the case of the FAFSA, what I'm going to call the non-custodial parent is not reported on the FAFSA at all. So I know that's very confusing to people, but that is the way the FAFSA is designed. Also, if you have a legal guardian who is not your parent, you do not need to report the legal guardian's information on the FAFSA. You'll typically be considered an independent student in that case, and you will not need to report parent information. That's not common, but I know it's out there. So if that is any of your situation, legal guardian as designated by court is not included. From there, you're then going to determine how many people are in the household. So you have those parents or one parent, you, so there's at least two. Or if parent is married, there's at least three. Then look at who else is being supported by these parents or parent. And those children are also reported. Okay, so that's how you're determining the households. Then of those children, how many are attending college? So if you have a sibling or step sibling who's also in college, then you'd report. So number in college is always at least one. And then if you have others in college, then it would increase based on how many other are in college in the upcoming year. So we're talking about the 2021-2022 academic year, or whenever you're going to be in school. In addition, there's financial information, both the parent and the student. There's different sections for each of you. Will be reporting for this year. If you're a senior, then you're reporting on your 2019 income. So this is the tax return you would have already filed by now. So you have all of this information. It's always a prior year, okay? So it's like 2 years before the academic year starts, if that makes any sense at all. So for those of you that are seniors, you're reporting your 2019 income. For those of you that are juniors, you'll be reporting the 2020 income. You're going to report both taxable and untaxed income, and just pay careful attention to each of the fields as you go through the FAFSA. It will tell you exactly what to report. Over on the right side of the screen, there's a little help and hints, I believe it says. And as you move to each question, that help will change and give you specific information about that question. So if you're not sure what to report, take a look at that and it will tell you exactly what to do. In addition, most people will have to report assets, not everybody. It will ask you a series of questions to determine if you need to report assets. When we talk about assets in terms of the FAFSA, we're talking about things like money that you have in savings and checking accounts, investments that you might have, perhaps you own additional properties that maybe you rent out, or a second home or vacation property. Things like that are all reported. You'll also include any 529 college savings accounts that you have, and that goes in as a parent asset. So even though there's a beneficiary of the student, you want to report it as a parent. If you have, I get this question a lot, so I'll put it right out there. If you have grandparents or other relatives that have created a 529 account for the student, that is not reported here because it's not a parent asset or a student asset in this case. It will get reported in future years when the distribution of that money is made to help the student pay their bill. That is now untaxed income that the student received, and you would report that in the following year, the year that that would have taken place. So a little bit tricky in that case. In terms of assets, there's quite a number of assets that you do not need to report on the FAFSA. This includes the primary home in which you live. Any retirement accounts that you have do not need to be reported. Any life insurance policies you have don't need to report it. And if you own a small family business, which is defined as under 100 employees, then the value of that business is also not reported. So again, there's information on the FAFSA. The studentaid.gov site also has information about filing your FAFSA, where you can also get some information. So in a nutshell, that's most of what you're reporting. Debt is not reported. So I get this question a lot as well. You know, I have this high credit card debt, or loans against my car or my home, or other reasons for debt. Unfortunately, debt is not reported on the FAFSA unless it's a debt against an asset that you're already reporting, in which case you're reporting the net value of that asset. So that's the FAFSA. Now, in addition, there are some colleges and universities that require the CSS profile. And I had mentioned earlier that you never need to pay for anything except one thing. and that's the CSS profile. So you see there the cost, and that is a time that you'll need to pay. It works similar to the FAFSA in that you can do all of your colleges that require the profile in one application. So when you go onto the site, it will ask you what colleges are you applying to very early on, because different colleges can choose to ask different questions. So it's kind of building your application for you based on the colleges that you're applying to. I'm not aware of any public universities that require the CSS profile. It's more likely to be independent or private colleges, and they will have this on their websites. The CSS profile also has a list of participating schools, so you can check that as well. It is also, if you're a senior, it's also available now. For juniors out there, October 1st, it will become available. So the FAFSA and the CSS profile open up at the same time. This is a case where the non-custodial parent will include their information. So there's a separate profile for the non-custodial parent. So you don't need to get together, or parents that are not friendly with each other and don't want to share information. That's not an issue. The non-custodial parent will have their form and you'll have your form, and the college board that runs the CSS profile will pull all that together and send it all to the school. And MEFA also has a wonderful webinar for more details on the CSS profile that you could take advantage of. And lastly, for schools that don't require the profile, but they might have a few more questions that the FAFSA doesn't ask that they would like to have. So keep an eye out for colleges that might ask for some additional information. My own daughter, she went to a public university that only required the FAFSA, but my other daughter did go to a private college here in Massachusetts that did not require the CSS profile, so I was very happy about that. But then to learn that they did have this one simple little form, it had about 6 more questions on it that they wanted to know. And so just make sure you don't miss that. It's an easy thing to miss because your application will be sitting there waiting for you to submit all of your materials. So that's the applications. Now, after you submit your applications, you will get some notification. So all of this pretty much at the same time. The colleges are receiving your data electronically. The state of Massachusetts receives this data electronically as well, so that they can confirm your eligibility for state financial aid. And then you as the student will receive what's called a student aid report, typically by email, but if for some reason you didn't include your email, then you'll get it by mail. And you do want to take a look at that. So again, keep an eye on your email, students. It's really, really important that you're keeping an eye on your email. And look for that one, take a look at it, and see if there's any messages. It might be telling you things that you need to take care of, if there was any kind of issues. Also take a look at it for accuracy. Make sure that the information you put there is what you intended to put there. My annual example is a family that I worked with whose income was $60,000, and by mistake they hit an extra 0, so it came through to the university I was working with at the time of $600,000. And with a $600,000 income for this family, they did not qualify for financial aid. But with a $60,000 income, they qualified for a lot of financial aid. And they didn't notice the error. And it was very late before they notified us. We did not have additional financial aid available for them at that time. So it was really a sad situation. So take a few minutes and make sure that the information you reported is accurate and what you intended. And again, if you're able to use that IRS data retrieval tool, it will eliminate that problem. The other thing that may happen is you may receive notification that you were selected for a process called verification, and that's going to require some additional documents for you to provide. So try not to get too upset about that. You thought you were finished and now you're feeling harassed for even more information. It is a necessary evil, if you will, in the process. The federal processors will, in most cases, make the determination of who is selected for verification. It's nothing to be worried about. It just means there's some things that we need to verify. In some cases, colleges will select for verification as well, based on what they're seeing. They might have a question. And there are some colleges that do 100% verification, and everybody's expected to do it. So Just be aware of that, and I'm going to go into a little bit more detail on that as well. Once we receive everything that we need, then we're going to start to determine your financial aid award. Be aware that if the college is asking for additional documents, it may be holding up your award. So there's some colleges, Dean does this. If you're selected for verification, but we have enough information, we will send you a tentative award. So based on the information we have, this is what you're eligible for. We call it tentative because we can't confirm it until we get that verification step done, but at least you'll have an idea without waiting too long. But get those verification documents in as quickly as possible. Get that confirmed award so you know for sure what you're going to qualify for. In the case of verification, basically it's literally just verifying most of the information or some of the information on your application. So most common is tax returns, verifying that tax information. There's a very common document called the verification worksheet where it gets into untaxed income, who's in the household, who's in college, some additional information about that. Another common one is verifying the value of your assets. There might be a question, and so there might be a form or a statement that you're asked. So those are the three most common. Just keep an eye out, read it, try not to second guess things, just keep moving and try to respond as quickly as you can. Many colleges now have different application portals. And so use those portals where you'll have checklists, and that's a really easy way for you to keep track of what the colleges need and what's been received. Other communications might be out there. Some colleges are only doing things electronically. So be careful about missing your emails because it's really important communications that are going on. Work with your financial aid offices. We are really great people. We're not scary people. And our goal is to help you make it to our colleges. We want you to be able to enroll. So if we've admitted you, we want you to be able to come. And if there's anything preventing that, we want to try to work with you. And if we can make it possible, then we want to help you to do that. So if you have any questions about anything on your financial aid award or anything about the financial aid process, then contact financial aid offices at any of your colleges, phone, email. Some schools have chat now, various ways. There's more schools that are now offering you the ability to schedule an appointment online. So take advantage of that. If you're up in the middle of the night and you know you're not going to get a hold of anybody, but you put in a little form to say, I want to schedule a time to talk to you to make sure you're available. Look for those little forms. Some colleges are starting to do that as well, particularly in this time with COVID and less people on campus. I also want to talk just briefly about special considerations here. In this year of the pandemic, we know that many families have been affected financially, and colleges are very aware of it. The 2019 income is not going to tell us your story. So if you've been impacted and you have had a loss of income, or maybe medical expenses that you weren't anticipating, then definitely get in touch with the colleges who can help you with that process. There's an appeal that we usually call it, and they'll help you get through that. Look on the websites, you might find appeal information right on those websites as well. So definitely take advantage of that. Don't be shy. Again, we want to help you. We want you to get as much financial aid as you could possibly qualify for. And with that, Julie, before we get into the next section, do we have questions on this section?
Yeah, you know, there's one question, a sort of a clarifying question about, you went over the divorced and separated parents and how families in that situation would file, but this person is asking for a clarification. So if I don't live with my child, but I am legally married, does that mean only my wife's annual income is to be reported?
If you are married, it's both parents. So if you are married, both parents are included.
So okay, so
Right. So if you are still legally married, you're not divorced, you're not separated, you happen to have two households, but you are married, then both parents are included. Now, you might want to talk to the financial aid office about the additional expense your family has because of a second household. And that might be a special consideration that, depending on the college, they may take that into consideration, that there's a second household that you are supporting, and you can talk about your circumstances with the college. But yeah, if you're married, then both parents.
Thank you.
Okay. I know that's a twist I don't usually get, Julie.
I know.
All right, but yeah, there's every combination out there. Okay, should we ready to move on to how we make the financial aid decisions? Yeah. Okay.
Perfect.
So a couple more financial aid concepts to learn about. Number one is the cost of attendance. So we split this into kind of two groups. The blue boxes that you see there, tuition fees, room and board, is what we call direct expenses or billed cost. These are the costs that most people think about with the cost to attend college. You're going to get a bill, you're going to pay for these fees directly to the college. In addition, though, think about what we call indirect expenses, because this is going to vary from one student to the next, but that are also important costs for you to attend college. Books and supplies being the most prominent, but also transportation. Whether you're a commuter or you live a distance away from school, you're going to have to get to and from school. So some transportation costs are factored into your total cost of attendance, as well as personal expenses that you have throughout the year. So there is some additional costs built in when we're determining your eligibility for financial aid, knowing that you have these charges or these costs as well. So keep cost of attendance in the back of your mind. Now, the expected family contribution, or the EFC, is the result of your FAFSA or your CSS profile. All of the numbers and all of the information that you put on those forms get all crunched down into one number called the EFC. And you will see what that is after you submit your FAFSA and get that student aid report, and you will see what your EFC is. What that EFC is telling us is that it indicates what, based on a standard formula, your family should be able to absorb for a year of college costs. I often get the question when people see what their EFC is, that's for all 4 years, right? And the answer to that is no. It's what you should be able to manage for 1 year. Now, that does not mean that you can write a check for that amount. That just means that your family should be able to manage that. It might mean that you manage that over time. And we're going to get into that in a little bit. But I think of it more as an indicator. So the lower the EFC, the more financial aid eligibility you will have, and you'll see how that plays out in just a minute. The whole concept is predicated on the fact that the primary responsibility for paying for college is the family, both the student and the parent. And so that's where we start with what does this formula tell us is reasonable for this family to be able to manage, and then we try to fill in as much of the rest of it as we can. Like I said, it's not necessarily what you will pay. It's more of an indicator to determine eligibility. And we have a few slides coming up where you'll understand that a little bit better. The formula also takes into consideration if there is more than one child in college. So the way the formula works, there's a family contribution at the end of it, but it is broken out into a student contribution and a parent contribution. So if there is more than one child in college, then the parent contribution is split up into those children. So if the parent contribution was $1,000, or not dollars, but it was 1,000, and there were one child in college, then the parent contribution is 1,000. If it's two, then the parent contribution is 500. Okay, so it splits by the number of children so that it's spread out among everybody. There's an EFC calculator available on the MEFA.org website. So if you're interested, before filing your FAFSA to see what your EFC might be. Take advantage of that tool. There's details about the formula if you're interested in how that formula works and what is involved with it. It's pretty complex, but you can get information on the website that you see there. So moving on to the formula that we use to determine your eligibility, it's really quite simple. So we start with that cost of attendance, and that's going to vary from one school to the next. Then we deduct from that your family contribution, because again, as I mentioned, is your responsibility first. So we're going to take that out of your cost and expect that you'll be able to handle that part of it. And the difference is your financial aid eligibility, and we often call it financial need. And that's what we're going to try to meet as much as possible with financial aid from all of the various sources. So let me give you a little visual on what's happening when the financial aid office is putting together your financial aid award. And the example here is a college whose cost of attendance is $45,000. And if you think of this green vessel like a barrel or whatever vessel you would like to imagine. And what the college financial aid office is doing is trying to fill up that barrel. And so we're going to start putting things into it. And the first thing we put in is that family contribution, or your EFC. Okay, so as we looked in the previous slide, we start 45,000 is the cost. We deduct 5,000, that leaves 40,000 of financial aid eligibility. And now we're going to try to start meeting that 40,000. So we're going to start with scholarships and grants. And this is exactly how Dean College does it, and most colleges do it. So the scholarship was determined in the admissions office. The admissions office tells the financial aid office that each student qualified for whatever their scholarship amount is, and then the financial aid office is going to try to build on that. So in this case, the financial aid office said, okay, they have a long way to go. We have, based on our formula for giving money, this student is eligible for $17,500 in grant. But the vessel is not full yet, so we're going to keep going. And next, we're going to look at those student loans. And as you saw on an earlier slide, $5,500 is the maximum freshman level student loan. So that's going to go in next. And you'll probably see, and unless you're looking at community colleges that has a much lower cost, you're probably going to see a $5,500 loan just about everywhere. Still not full, so now we looked at the work study program and we said, okay, we're going to give you some work study as well, and you can work part-time and help pay for some of those expenses that way. Now the barrel's not quite full, but now we have a concept called unmet need. So the college went through all of the different sources that they had and that they were aware of, and they filled up as much of the barrel as they could, but they couldn't quite get to the top, and there was $5,000 that they were not able to meet. So you need to keep in mind that what you'll end up having to pay for the college is not necessarily just what that EFC was, but a combination of the EFC and any unmet need. So at this point, at this particular college, assuming that you want to accept those student loans, your out-of-pocket cost is going to be about $10,000. So that's how it all comes together. A very handy tool, and every college has a net price calculator on their website. We're all required to have it, and we all have it. And it's a very handy tool if you're comparing colleges, or you just want to get an idea of how affordable this college might be, or how much financial aid I might qualify for. Some colleges include their merit-based aid in that calculation, or that calculator as well. We do at Dean, but not all do. So pay attention to whatever information is provided to you at the beginning of that net price calculator so you understand what you're getting. But it's a wonderful tool to just get an idea. It's not exact, but it will give you an idea of what we call net cost to attend that school might be, and a great way to compare colleges. I'll give you a tip that there's all different calculators out there. Some of them are fairly lengthy and takes a little bit longer and ask for a little more information before you get to the end. I will tell you that those are much more accurate than others that are pretty quick, and in just a few minutes you provide some basic information. You'll get an idea for sure, but it's probably not quite as exact and accurate at than those that ask you for more information. So definitely take advantage of those net price calculators. So let's look at, now you're getting your award letters. You might get them in the mail, you might get them online. Again, don't miss those emails if students are listening. I know that email is not your favorite place to be, but this is not a time to ignore them. So please, please, please keep up with them, parents. If if you don't have access to your student's email or you're not using a family email, make sure your students are checking, because there are more and more colleges that are only delivering this information online. At Dean, we still send you the nice packet in the mail. So you get mail from us. You would get notified online first, and then your packet follows. So let's look at 3 colleges and what you might expect to have happen. Again, we're using a $45,000 just to make this simple. Every college has the same cost. That's less likely in your situation that they're all the exact same cost, but for the ease of this demonstration, they're all going to be the same with that $5,000 EFC and your $40,000 eligibility. And here's 3 different colleges, A, B, and C, that offered you different amounts. So College A did a really nice job with a really big grant and scholarship. They were able to meet your $40,000 need, and you have no unmet needs. So as long as you can cover that $5,000 EFC, College A is a great option for you. In College B's situation, they offered you less grants and scholarship, same loan, same work study. So you have a $7,000 unmet need for that one. And College C was really disappointing, and still got some scholarship money, but not quite as much. And so you have a much higher unmet need in that case. So why might that be? And there's lots of different reasons for that. First of all, parents who are there, I will tell you that there's a good chance that the college your student wants to attend is College C and not College A. It happens all the time. So be prepared for that, and you need to be having those conversations. But there's lots of different reasons for that happening. Some of it is timing. If you applied late, that could happen. But oftentimes it's just different policies and different amounts of money that colleges have available. Also, keep in mind and know how desirable you are, if you will, how competitive you are at each college. The more competitive you are, then the more likely you are to receive a higher level scholarship. And so you might be very competitive at College A. They really want you. You're at the high end of their applicant pool, and they're offering you a really nice scholarship to come to their school. Where College C might be your reach school, you might not be quite as competitive there, or maybe they don't even have any merit scholarship, and so they only offer need-based grant. And in their formula, that's the maximum you could get. So there's lots of different reasons for it, but you can position yourself by finding out whether or not a college even offers merit scholarships, and then where do you fall in the selectivity of that college, and that could sort of set you up for a higher scholarship or a lower scholarship if you can get to that information. Here's another example where there's some parent loan in the mix. So you want to really pay attention to what the different types of financial aid are that are being offered to you. So if you just look at the bottom line, it looks like you got the same amount of money from each school. Your unmet need is the same as each school. It's going to cost you the same to attend each school. And so great, I can go anywhere because it's going to cost me the same no matter what. But it's really important that you look at all of the details and see what's making up that total. So in the case of College B and C, they added a parent loan. So parents, this is now on you. This is not the student. And so you need to decide, are you willing to borrow that loan? You don't have to. But if you don't, then that total changes quite significantly. and the unmet need changes significantly. And now your comparison of the colleges are very different. So it's important that you're checking on the combination of different types of aid, particularly with those loans, both students and parents, to make sure that this college is as affordable as you thought it would be, and that the way that they're offering you financial aid is with the types of financial aid that you are willing to use. So with that, let me break for another minute for a swig of water and to see if we have any questions about how the financial aid awards come together.
Iris, we do not have any questions at the moment, so.
Awesome. I must be
going.
so,
Yeah.
I either am so clear that you're understanding everything I'm saying, or you're so confused that you don't even know where to begin. But don't worry, at the end, you're going to get the resources of how to get the answers to any of your questions.
It's
all
great.
right. So
I think it's the former.
Let's get into paying for college. And here is, so now we're sort of looking at that bottom line, okay? And in this example, we're using a little bit of a different example. So now the bottom line shows that you have $20,000 that you're going to need to cover. And many people will look at it and say, okay, it's going to cost $20,000. I don't have $20,000. We're going to have to borrow $20,000. And before you go down that road, we want you to really think about the options that you really have with your family. So think about past income that you might have been able to save. So whether it's savings accounts or investments that you have, those 529 plans, now it's time to let go of it. You've been saving for a long time. Now it's time to use it. So do you have some of that savings? Most colleges will also offer a payment plan where you can break up that cost into monthly payments, making it more manageable. So if each month you have some funds available that your entire paycheck isn't going to your household expenses and there is money left each month, then consider breaking that down into a payment plan. Most colleges, it's a 10-month plan, but look at the information you get from the colleges. They'll explain how it works. And so maybe you can pull a little bit out each month and you put that towards this payment plan, which is then not accruing interest or anything like that. So in this family situation, yep, student's been working, saved some money, and so there's $1,000 to apply there. Parents have some savings, so there's $5,000 in savings to apply, another $5,000 that we can apply to a payment plan. And now we have $10,000 remaining instead of 20. We don't have those resources available right now, but that's what we're going to borrow. We'll pay that back over time. But $10,000 is much more manageable than $20,000. So make sure you're thinking about your whole situation and try not to get overwhelmed by the bottom line and really think it through in terms of what your family has available. I love this slide because these are the conversations that you need to be having. For those of you that are juniors, you should be having these conversations now. For those of you that are seniors, if you haven't had these conversations yet, you need to have these conversations now. Don't wait, parents in particular, and students, if you're on this in this meeting, ask your parents if you haven't had the money talk yet. But really important to understand what is doable. And parents, when you tell your children, you can go to that fancy, expensive school, but you're on your own, we can't help you. And students will say, fine, I'll do whatever I need to do to get to that school. And if I need to borrow $100,000 to go, I will. Well, that's a lot easier said than done. So that's really something that you need to explore and see if that's even going to be an option for you. So have the hard conversation now. There's some great thoughts here on, how to reduce your cost and the kinds of things to think about. Remember that freshman year is just year one. If you're borrowing $10,000 to use the previous example, multiply that by 4. So, is that okay? At the end of it, you'll have $40,000 of debt. Now, many families can manage that just fine, but everybody can't. And if tuition goes up each year, or the cost of room and board goes up each year, might that amount go up a little bit each year? So it might not quite be 40, maybe it'll be 42, or even more. So make sure you're doing the math and multiplying. Is grad school in your future? That's going to be another expense to pay. Now, students can borrow more easily for graduate school on their own, but again, looking at the debt long-term is important. So keep all of that in mind. And when you're thinking about borrowing, if it's just those student loans that we've talked about, most students with a bachelor's degree will get a job that they will be able to manage those payments just fine. It's rare that a student can't make it. However, it's also dependent on what career are you considering? And do you know that now or not? Many of you don't know that now, and that's just fine. You might have some ideas of different areas that you're interested in, but the example I like to use is, are you interested in being an early childhood educator and work in a preschool, which tends to be a pretty low salary? Are you interested in being an engineer, which is one of the highest salaries? If you're going to be an engineer, you'll be able to manage much more debt than the student who wants to be a preschool teacher. So keep that in mind as you think about this long term. If you know that you're going to be borrowing a private loan, which is outside of those federal programs, it's good to know what your credit score is so that you'll know if you'll even qualify for a loan, what kind of rates you might be able to get. So if you're not aware of your credit score, it's a good thing to find out about that. And then, as we were talking about earlier, look at that bottom line, compare each college, and have that tough conversation, if it is a tough conversation, about what makes the most sense. I also want to say that the right school is not necessarily the least expensive schools. There's a lot involved, and I often break it down into the college fit breaks out into 3 different types of fit. One is financial, which is what we're talking about now, but also think about the academic fit for you. And thirdly, think about the social or the cultural fit for you. Is this a place where you're going to feel comfortable, where you fit in, where you think you're going to be, happy with the types of students that go there, with the type of faculty that are there, with the type of support that school offers, the types of opportunity that the school is offering you. So think about all these things as well, because sometimes spending a little more money is worth that investment in yourself, because you're going to get more of the experience that will make you most successful. Some opportunities to reduce those costs in Massachusetts include mass transfer. So that's where there's a great opportunity if you start at community colleges and move from there to a 4-year school. There's the mass transfer website, and you see the link there, gives you some great information on how that works. There's some new information. I'm not sure if it's up there yet. It's brand new, where there's also some pathways from community colleges to private colleges in Massachusetts as well. So take a look at that. And then within the New England Board of Higher Education, there's some agreements among the New England schools where you can reduce that out-of-state tuition cost for some schools for certain programs. And there's a link there to go to the New England Board of Higher Education website. So take a look at that as well if you're thinking about going to public schools within New England. And in terms of some free resources after tonight of where you can continue to get some help, there's a FAFSA Day program. And if you go to the FAFSAday.org website, you can get some help with your FAFSA. So take a look at that. Mass EdCo is an organization that is available to assist families with the entire college process, actually. So they can help you with admissions information as well, but they can help you with the financial aid. If most of the families, I think, are here in the Metro West area. And as far as I know, there isn't a Mass EdCo site right here in Metro West. There's one in Boston, there's one in Worcester. But for those of you outside of the area, they're not that far, but it is another place that offers some free help. And MEFA, of course, is available to help you as well. So as we're starting to wrap up the session, what can you do now? There are some things if you want to take some action that you haven't done yet. Get that FSA ID, particularly if you're in your senior year, get that done. Make sure that you know what the deadlines are and what the application requirements are so you're ready to go. And there are additional webinars available through MEFA. So take a look at their events page. There's a financial aid blog with tons of information that's really helpful to you. So take a look at what MEFA has available. The MEFA website is a wealth of information, which is why I've worked so closely with MEFA for many, many years. And I'm proud to feel a partner with MEFA. Julie says all the time, Iris, we need to put you on payroll. I said, well, I'll let you know when I retire and then we'll talk about it. But MEFA really is a fantastic resource for families on just about anything you need to know about college. Connect with MEFA on social. I don't know, Julie, if you want to speak to all of the social channels that are available and what people can expect there.
Yeah, well, we just try to, you know, put out any news, any announcements and news of, you know, events like this that we'll be holding for the rest of the year. So it's just, I think, especially at this time, juniors, seniors in high school, it's great to be connected. Both, you'll be connected now to our email curriculum and now to all of the places on social, so that you just get all of this information and stay really up to date and informed.
Fantastic. And on the last slide, I'll give you that direct contact information to MEFA. So there's their phone number. I know they always have people standing by, and an email that you can use. So certainly take advantage of some one-on-one questions that you might have. You know, that's a little difficult to do through these webinars, I know. So certainly feel free to give them a call, and they'll be happy to help you through that MEFA line. Julie, any other questions coming through that we want to try to get to?
Yeah, we do. We have a few. So let's go. And we have some that aren't too difficult, and then we have some tough ones. I might even start you off with a tough one.
All right.
You're up to it.
We'll
But these are hard situations that I know we hear about. So one student writes, what if you have the potential for an expensive school, but don't have the financial support from the parent?
Thank you for starting with that most difficult question, Julie. I appreciate that. And we face that a lot. You know, I face it at Dean. Dean is the fifth college that I have worked at. I have worked at a couple of other expensive colleges as well, where this is a common issue. And sometimes we can help and sometimes we can't. You know, what I really suggest to you is talk to the financial aid office. Let them know that you don't have the family support, that you'd really like to attend that college or university, and is there anything that the financial aid office can do to help you? They will work with you. They'll try to, you know, help you talk about other resources that might be available. Whether or not after talking to you, they uncover, you know, based on that conversation, some additional money that might be available that we didn't know you might have been available before. But I will say, everybody doesn't make it to the school, to the dream school. You know, the expensive private schools are sometimes sadly out of reach. I wish it wasn't that way. I wish that there was enough money for everybody. I wish every college could meet that financial need as we talked about. Unfortunately, there's just not enough money available for everyone. And so that's why it's really important now, both for the parents that are here and for students that are here that need to be talking to their parents, to really understand as you go in, to be realistic about what your circumstances will be. And although you should be very, very proud when you get into those schools that you've dreamed about, be a little bit realistic about, I'm proud that I got in, but I know that if I can't get the money to go, I'm going to need to go somewhere else. And let me tell you all, your result in college is based on you. It's much more on you than on the college. And I kind of pick on Harvard a lot, where it's not Harvard that makes the student, it's the students that make Harvard, right? They only take the top students, right? So it's the students that make Harvard so fabulous. And I'm just picking on Harvard. You can apply that to any school. But it's really you making your best effort when you go to college, no matter what the college is. If you take advantage of every opportunity at the college that you're at, you will be an extremely successful person. And if you don't graduate with excess debt that maybe you didn't need to take, then you might be in a better position upon graduation to have more opportunities available to you. So it's a hard decision, and colleges are happy to talk to you about it. MEFA is happy to help you with it. Your school counselors, I'm sure, would be happy to help you with that conversation, but it's a tough one. I hope that's the toughest one, Julie.
Yeah, that is because of the emotional piece attached to it, right?
It's hard. It's hard.
Yeah.
We get it.
But I think what you said is so right, and I'm sure that student will do fine no matter what.
Absolutely. Will.
So another question: would you just be willing to share a little more about the FAFSA and how parental income versus assets are considered?
Sure. So they're considered actually quite differently. And let me start with assets, because that's what everybody gets most concerned about. So if you are a family that has what you feel are significant assets, the assets are the smaller part of the formula in terms of influencing the amount of your family contribution. It's much more income driven than asset driven. So in the case of parent assets, correct me if I'm wrong, Julie, you probably have at the top of your head, it's like 6% or so of your assets, right? Mm-hmm. Is that still right? Yeah. I'm getting old and numbers are getting harder. It's about 6% of your assets that are applied to the formula. With income, it's a very complicated system, but it's much more income driven. On the student side of the equation, it's about 20% of the student asset that's considered, because the expectation is that if a student has assets at this stage in their life, that money should be going to their education. And while it's only applying 20% at a time, but that, the student should be able to put more of their assets into their education. So it is a little bit different between students and parents, but much more income driven in the formula.
Thank you. And then could you talk a little bit about the repayment options on the student loans, and what are the ways that students can repay those loans when they graduate?
Sure. And I'm going to go through it very briefly because it's a little bit complex. If you go to that studentaid.gov website and go to the loan section, you will get a ton of information about this. So there's a really good resource out there. But there are some different repayment options. The standard one is a 10-year repayment. So that's sort of where it starts. But there's something called income contingent payment. And they keep changing the name, Julie. I don't know what it is these days, but something to that effect, right? Income contingent. And what that's doing is knowing that, right out of college, your income might be lower than later, right? And so you can afford less now, you'll be able to pay more later. And then in some cases, depending on how long you're able to stay in repayment and what field you're in, there's some other opportunities that might forgive some of that loan over time. So I could do a whole half hour on loan repayment, probably an hour, but there are some different options. And again, even while you're in school, I had talked about if you have unsubsidized loans, then that interest is accruing. You have the option of just paying the interest while you're in school. So that's keeping your debt down a little bit further. And some families are able to manage that. I'll just pay the interest. And so then when I finish, I'm just paying the principal and the accruing interest from there. So that's another tip to keep it down a little bit. But there are many options, and take a look at that studentaid.gov site.
Thank you. And then just two more I have. One, and I find this is funny, Iris, because this came up on the last panel that you and I did together. But so I think it's an important thing to address. This person is asking, other than filling out the FAFSA, where else in the process is it important to let people know that I'll be having more than 2 or more children in college at the same time?
The only place you really need to put it is the FAFSA. And if you're at a school that requires the CSS profile, you will indicate it there as well. So from that, we know. I don't think that you need to do anything further than that.
That's great. And then lastly, I think, can you repeat talking about unmet need, how that gets factored into what is able to be financed.
So when you get to the point of financing, then kind of the EFC goes out the window, kind of, right? So now it's based on, here's the cost to attend this school. Here's the financial aid available. Now let's take the difference of that. The difference is then what you can be considering for financing, right? So look at it as, here's the cost of attendance, here's the financial aid available. What's the difference? That's the amount to consider for financing. I don't know if, so forget about the unmet need and the EFC and all of that. At that point, once you have all that information, cost of attendance, deduct the financial aid, what we call it, Dean, your out-of-pocket cost. Here's the difference, and then that's what you're exploring for financing and other methods, payment plans, all of that.
That's great.
In a nutshell, I realize that was a little simplistic, but hopefully that helped.
So, and I guess one more question. So does the FAFSA consider planning for younger children who are not college age, but will be soon?
Good question. Yes and no. Not as much as you would like is the short answer. The way it factors in is the reason for the question about how many people are in the household is that there is an allowance, I'll call that word, that is in the formula. So the larger your household, the larger the allowance is that you're supporting this household. So it's not specific to, there's college expenses coming up, but it is that you are supporting other children. And so that is reducing that parent contribution because of the size of the household. So in that respect, a little bit, but nobody knows if that younger student is really going to college or where they're going to college or cost of that college. So there really isn't a good way to factor that in, but it certainly is something as a family that you want to be thinking about.
Thank you. And I think that's it. What a great group. What wonderful questions. Iris, thank you for such a thorough and wonderful presentation. We got a lot of feedback that people were very happy with all of the information. And I will just say good luck, and please stay in touch with further questions. And I will be sending the recording and the slides tomorrow to all of you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Feel free to get in touch. We're happy to help you at any point in the process. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you. Bye-bye.